Hey guys, I'm in a different filming spot today. Hopefully this works for the meantime because right now it's getting dark. Too early for me to film outside. My lighting might not be great, but I did order a ring light and that should be in the mail next week. But in the meantime, this is going to have to do. My uploading hasn't really been consistent, but that's because I am still waiting to get a lot of the materials that I need to film videos and edit them the way that I want to. And once that stuff comes in, then I should be able to get it to be more constant and on a weekly basis. Today we're going to be talking about the case of Kirsten Costas, who was murdered by one of her classmates. Kirsten Costas was a 15-year-old girl in Orinda, California. Kirsten attended Marymount High School, and in 1984 she was murdered by one of her classmates. Kirsten was the kind of girl that everyone wanted to be. She was very pretty, she had a lot of friends, she was part of the varsity swim team, as well as playing baseball and soccer. Right after sophomore year of high school, Kirsten was elected to be a cheerleader for the next school year, which at this time period was something that a lot of girls had wanted to be. One day, Kirsten and a group of her friends, who were just as pretty and athletic and popular, were asked to join a group called the Bobolinks or the Bobbies. This was an elite socialite group who were pretty stuck up, and if you didn't fit their mold, you weren't asked to join. At the end of the school year, the Bobbies would initiate a group of girls to join for the next school year. At this particular year, it had included Kirsten Costas, Lauren Scher, and Bernadette Protti. For initiation, the girls were asked to either put eggs or mayonnaise in their hair, wear their mother's oldest clothes, and then go down to the nearest stoplight and try to sell kisses for a dime. If they passed initiation, they would become part of the Bobbies, which were the most popular girls in the school. So 2 weeks into summer, on a night where Kirsten wasn't home, her mother received a phone call to the house. The phone call was meant for Kirsten, but her mother picked it up and it was an invitation to an initiation dinner. They had said that Kirsten was going to be picked up on Saturday night and taken to the dinner that supposedly all of the new Bobbies were going to. On Saturday, June 23rd, 1984, Kirsten had gotten into the car with one of the girls that was supposed to take her to this dinner. Kirsten was in the car with this girl, and she had a conversation with this girl that made her feel uncomfortable. She felt unsafe and she felt weird, and had even told this girl, who was her friend at the time, that she was acting very weird. So this girl had brought her into a neighborhood that she had never been in before. So Kirsten, as she felt uncomfortable, got out of the car and walked up to the closest house. This happened to be the house of Alex and Mary Jane Arnold. She had told them that her friend was acting weird and that she felt unsafe being with her. They invited Kirsten into the house so that she could call one of her parents on the phone. But she couldn't reach her parents by phone, and at this point Alex Arnold had offered to drive Kirsten home. As he was driving Kirsten home, Alex Arnold noticed that there was a yellow Pinter following behind them the entire way. Kirsten's parents weren't home, so he had waited in the car so that she can get inside safely. The plan was that Kirsten was going to go up to her neighbor's door, and they were going to walk her home to her house so that she can be safe and be watched over until her parents got home. Well, before she had even made it to her neighbor's house, Kirsten Costas was attacked. At first, Alex Arnold had thought the attack was a fist fight, but actually, Kirsten was stabbed 5 times with a butcher knife before the girl had gone into her car and drove away. Not realizing that Kirsten was fatally wounded, Alex Arnold decided to get into the car and follow the other girl. He followed the girl for a bit, and then he had eventually lost her, and this is when he decided to turn around and check on Kirsten. As he pulled back up to Kirsten's house, he noticed police cars and ambulance outside. During this time period, the neighbors of the Costas had heard a scream and went outside. And this is when he found Kirsten on the ground, stabbed and losing blood quickly. The neighbor had been the one to call 911, and the ambulance arrived, followed by the police and Kirsten's parents. Kirsten was rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately it was too late for anything to be done. The case was labeled as a homicide and the search for a weapon began. Around 2 a.m. the following morning, Kirsten's parents were interviewed, and her mother had said that she was the one who had received the phone call about the initiation dinner that Kirsten was invited to. At this point, the police had contacted all of the members of the Bobolinks, and all of the members had said that there was not a dinner planned for that night. So at this point, it was clear that this dinner was a setup. They knew that the call was made by a young female, and they knew that she had to have known Kirsten well enough to mention the Bobolinks as an excuse to get Kirsten out of the house. Since it was the 1980s, they couldn't really trace the phone call anywhere, so they had to investigate differently. The police then decided to get in contact with the school. The principal said that it was unlikely that someone like Kirsten had a double life that was going to get her in any kind of trouble, and he thought that it was someone outside of the school that had done this. They began to investigate Kirsten's friends and classmates, and they asked about 100 girls of their whereabouts that night. One of the girls that were part of the Bobbies had her own theory about what happened that night. She said that Kirsten had been attacked because she symbolized the entire community and all of the things that it stood for. People were jealous of the Bobolinks. They were perfect, pretty, popular, athletic, and smart, so it was possible that someone thought of Kirsten as representing the group and took it out on her. Police had very few leads, and each of these leads were leading nowhere. The more people they questioned, the more they realized what Kirsten was really like. They found out that Kirsten was very outspoken and said things as they were, and that she could be condescending and mean at times, like any other teenage girl. Police began to think that it was an attack on Kirsten specifically and not on all of the Bobbies. Nancy now became a top suspect for most people. Police thought that she wasn't being open and honest with them, and they were right. Nancy wasn't in school that day because she had gone down to the police station. She had admitted to them that she wasn't at the movies that night and that she was at her boyfriend's house, hanging out with him, but she didn't want her parents to know. So this helped clear Nancy as a suspect, and because of this, the police had no other leads, and this is when they asked the FBI for help. Bob Gast was the one that was assigned to this case. But they used psychological tests to learn a lot about a suspect and a crime. You can even get an idea of the motive of the crime based on the murder weapon. With a knife, it usually signifies anger. It shows that you have to have been in close proximity to the person at the time of the murder and that physical force was involved. After 3 months, the FBI had completed their psychological profile. They found out that the attacker was from a Catholic family, was one of 6 children, and was probably a friend of the victim. The police ran over a list of Kirsten's friends to compare to the FBI profile, and that's when they found a match. Bernadette Protti. Bernadette seemed like an unlikely killer to those that knew her. Bernadette went to the funeral, stayed in the Bobbies, and mourned along with everyone else. She seemed calm and collected during her questioning and even had an alibi. A little background on Bernadette Protti was that she was also part of the Bobolinks, and she wanted to be a cheerleader that year, and she wanted to be part of the yearbook committee, both of which she was denied access to. But Kirsten Costas had made it a part of both. Bernadette began to be jealous of Kirsten. She wanted everything that Kirsten had. She looked at Kirsten as someone who was superior, and she wanted Kirsten's approval for everything. Bernadette was also popular. She was also part of a rich family, a wealthy family, but that wasn't enough because she didn't have everything that Kirsten had. Bernadette had even passed a polygraph test about asking where she was that night. Later, the police found the family car, the yellow Pinter, in the garage and used it as evidence in the case against Bernadette. Bernadette's alibi was that she was babysitting for a family that night. So police contacted the family, and the family said that they hadn't used Bernadette for a babysitter in over a year. So this seemed very suspicious, and the police were fully convinced that Bernadette was the killer. but they needed a confession because they didn't have any evidence that she had carried out the murder. So they called her in for her 5th interview. During this interview, Bernadette remained calm and collected, and she didn't break down. Then they showed her the FBI profile, which was almost perfectly matched to her. Bernadette claimed that she didn't have anything to do with the murder, and that was the end of the interview. A few days later, Bernadette wrote a note to her parents, telling her mom not to read it until 30 minutes after she left the house. Her mom set an alarm for exactly 30 minutes before reading the note. The note had said, "The FBI man thinks I did it, and he is right." Bernadette's parents went straight after her, and they took Bernadette to the police station where she broke down and confessed. 3 months later was Bernadette's trial, where she had broken down and confessed yet again to making up the Bobby's initiation dinner and to calling Kirsten's mom to get Kirsten out of the house. The night that Bernadette picked up Kirsten, they had gone into an argument, but it is still unknown what the argument was about. Kirsten got out of the car and said that Bernadette was acting weird and that she felt unsafe, and this is when she went up to Alex Arnold's house. Bernadette had then followed Alex Arnold's car back to Kirsten's house. She was worried that Kirsten was going to tell everyone about the conversation they had in the car, and that Kirsten was going to make everyone think that Bernadette was weird. But Bernadette says that it was not a premeditated murder. And Bernadette's sister even said that she might have left the 12-inch kitchen knife in the car by mistake because she used it to peel fruits and vegetables on her way to and from work. After 3 days, Bernadette was convicted of second-degree murder, and her maximum sentence was 9 years because she was 16 at the time of sentencing. Bernadette served just over 7 years of her sentence, and Bernadette Protti now goes by a different name. So that was a case of Kirsten Costas and how she was murdered by Bernadette Protti, and I decided to make a video on this case just because it was interesting to me. I actually found out about this case very recently, and I just thought it was interesting, mainly because the reason for murder is so stupid. They had both gone to a very privileged private school, a school that was full of wealthy families, wealthy, important families, and Bernadette Protti had also been a rich family, was also invited to be part of the Bobolinks, which showed that she was popular, but that just wasn't enough for her. She wanted to be part of the cheerleading group, and she wanted to be part of yearbook committee, and both were things that she didn't get but that Kirsten got, and ultimately that was the reason why she killed Kirsten Costas. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you again next time.